Are you editing your own podcast? If so, that is the fastest way to start hating the podcast process. In this video, I'm going to explain why and give you some tips on how you can get that task off of your desk. I'm Sebastian Rusk, and I help marketers, business owners, and entrepreneurs start a podcast. So think about it. How many countless hours have you spent attempting to, or maybe successfully, editing podcast episodes? In my opinion, it's not the best use of time. And have you ever gotten to the very end and then your computer freezes and the whole project just goes goodbye? Yes, we've all been there more times than not. The good news is there are solutions available to make sure that doesn't happen. And it doesn't include you editing your podcast either. Let's get down to it. All right, first tip for getting this task off of your desk, you must hire someone. That's like any other task in your business or the work that you do that is not the best use of your time. You outsource it. You find a freelancer, you hire a contractor, maybe you've got the resources to be able to hire somebody on your team, whatever the case may be. But let's just say that you are a solopreneur and you're just getting started with your podcast, but you've been spending a tremendous amount of time editing your podcast versus recording new episodes for your podcast. That's a great indication on whether or not you should be hiring a freelancer. Now, I get it. Some of you control freaks out there, we've all been there. I think we've all got a smidge of control freak in us in some form or fashion. But remember, if you can get this task off of your desk, it frees up time for you to be able to do something more productive where your time is well spent. That leads me into your first tip, which would be to hire a freelancer. You can go to websites like Fiverr.com or Upwork or any other freelance website out there. They're a dime a dozen, and type in podcast editor or audio editing. You'll find a number of search results of people able and willing and ready to help you edit your podcast. And it's not as expensive as you would imagine it to be. We've been able to edit podcast episodes for as little as $5 before. So is it worth $5 for you to get your podcast edited by someone else and take it completely off your plate? It certainly is in my book. Now, you may think of things different, and again, you may think, but nobody's going to do it like I do it. Well, you've got to decide whether or not you want to take the time to figure out editing your podcast or editing your podcast, or is it worth 5, 10, 15, even $20 an episode to pay somebody to get it off your plate? There's nothing better than being able to record a podcast episode, send it to someone, have them edit it, and you just upload it and move on with your day, versus spending countless hours behind an editing software hoping that you're editing correctly. Another important tip to consider is that when you hire an audio editor, a podcast editor, a content editor, whatever you'd like to call them, they are skilled within that space. So if they're an audio engineer or audio editor or podcast editor, they understand audio. They understand how to edit a file and remove background noises and remove any unnecessary sounds and improve the quality of the audio and master the file. These are all things that I don't know how to do. I could open up GarageBand, throw some audio files in there, organize them, and pull off a podcast episode if I absolutely had to, but I don't have the skill set to be able to go in there and master a file, improve the sound, remove any unnecessary sounds, etc., etc. It's a very tedious process, but a good audio editor will be able to knock this out in no time, and it's not going to cost you a fortune to do. Remember, investing in your business, investing in getting the tasks off your desk so that you can free up more time to do more productive tasks will always pay off. Think about the last time you outsourced something or got something off your desk and you regretted it. Unless, of course, the person did a bad job, but that's part of the process. You got to find somebody that's going to do a good job. But sourcing a freelancer, figuring out a budget that's fair. Remember, you can't put a price tag on convenience or sanity. And there's nothing worse than spending an entire weekend attempting to edit your podcast. A lot of people do it, and I don't recommend that they continue to do it. It's far easier just to outsource it and get that task off of your plate. Well, I hope you're leaving this video knowing at least one or two things, or maybe shifting your mindset slightly on being able to outsource the current podcast editing you are doing. Podcast editing is very rarely an enjoyable process, and it's more frustrating than not. And the last thing I want to see you do is take on too much, especially the tasks that you don't need to be doing, when you could be simply delegating and focusing on the important task at hand, which is hosting your podcast, identifying strategic guests, growing your show, creating social media content around each episode, and staying fully vested in your role as a podcast host, not podcast host / editor. Questions about podcast editing or finding a freelancer or podcasting in general, go ahead and leave a comment below. I do respond to each and every one of you lovely people, and I sure do appreciate you tuning in. Until next time.